so proud of it. Yeah. Okay, welcome. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for getting on the buses. Most of all, thank you for an extraordinary day. I had the privilege of going into every strand, and every staff developer said to me behind their hand, "We seriously have the best people in our strand." So well done, you, and thank you for being here tonight. It is my pleasure to do the acknowledgement of country. Victoria University acknowledges the ancestors, elders and families of the Wurundjeri and the Wadawurrung peoples of our Melbourne campuses. These groups are the custodians of university land and have been for many centuries. We acknowledge that the land on which our campuses stand is the place of age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. The Kulin people's living culture had and has a unique role in the life of these regions. VU supports the aim of Reconciliation Australia to build better relationships between the wider Australian community and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples for the benefit of all Australians. It is important that staff, students and visitors understand and respect the significance of recognising the traditional owners of university land. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you here, and we have some very special guests who will get introduced to you as the late afternoon event unfolds. But to start us off, I'd like to welcome the Vice-Chancellor for Victoria University, Professor Peter Dawkins AO, and welcome his wife Sue Sleep, who has joined us as well, which is lovely. Without Peter's support, AVID would be homeless, so I just want to acknowledge and thank you, Peter, for giving us a home.
Well, thanks very much, Claire, and thank you for your leadership of AVID. May I also acknowledge the ancestors, elders and families of the Boonwurrung and Wadawurrung and Wurundjeri of the Kulin, and that the land on which we stand is the place of age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. So welcome to you all to the wonderful west of Melbourne, to this historic seaport town of Williamstown, not so very far from Footscray, the home of Victoria University, where many of you have been this morning. Some of you I know at Wyndham Tech School on another of our campuses in the west of Melbourne. And we really are proud to be the home of AVID Australia, which we are firm believers in. We can see evidence in schools in the west of Melbourne of the transformational impact that AVID has on schools and on the young people going through them. And it's a privilege and pleasure to be the home of the AVID Australia. I'd just like to welcome you all to the 2019 AVID Summer Institute. And it really is great to see you all here together. I think you should give yourselves all a round of applause for being here today. And I'd particularly like to welcome our first speaker, who will be following shortly, the first student speaker winner from Western Australia's Maccabi Rise Primary School, Rory Spaeth, and her family. So please welcome Rory. So it's wonderful to have you here from Western Australia, in the west of Melbourne, and well done on your very special achievement. And I've had a little preview of what you might be saying this afternoon, and I think everybody will find it a very inspirational story, and I think it's very courageous of you to stand up here as well and talk to this crowd today. But really look forward to hearing you speak later this evening. So just a little bit about AVID that most of you will know well, but with 450 participants from across Australia, primary and secondary government and non-government schools represented, including 67 AVID schools across the country in 4 states. It's clear that the AVID program's high-impact teaching and learning strategies are making a real impact on the lives of young people Australia-wide. AVID has been recognised nationally with 2 Principals of the Year, Keith Svensson from WA and Andrew Peach from Queensland, and 3 Teachers of the Year in Western Australia and Queensland, which is a wonderful achievement and deserves another round of applause. This year it's also great to see another partnership being developed to enhance teacher professional learning opportunities using state-of-the-art facilities, with the primary stream of the program strand being held at Wyndham Tech School, a venue situated at our Werribee campus, which I'm very, very proud of. I do just want to say something about the connection between our own undergraduate teaching at Victoria University and the AVID program. So many of you will know that at Victoria University we are implementing a transformational agenda in our own teaching and learning, a very student-focused, very student-centric approach to teaching and learning that's the first of its kind in an Australian university. And the VU way, which is teaching students in block mode, one subject at a time in small groups of approximately 30 students, abolishing lectures, interactive collaborative learning using good teaching methodology, something that is highly consistent with the AVID philosophy of what good teaching's about. And we are very delighted that that AVID has played its part in helping us to implement our block model and to develop our teachers. In fact, I benefited from that development myself with Claire Brown as my teacher, because I decided to go back into the classroom to teach a block of first year economics last year, second year economics this year, using the VUA, using active collaborative learning in these 9 hours a week with 30 students, in which outstanding teaching is really a requirement. You can't get away with mediocre teaching in that environment. And the techniques that AVID has and that Claire used in developing the teachers I was working with before I trusted myself to go back into the classroom were really extremely helpful, and it's been a major contribution to the professional development of particularly our first year college, which was another major reform of Victoria University, where we decided we needed our first year teachers to be dedicated to the success of our first year students, to ensure that there was a successful transition from secondary to tertiary education. And AVID's professional development work to assist us has been extremely, extremely helpful. I've also been into some AVID schools in the West of Melbourne and seen the effect that it's having on the students there. So we believe that equality for all students in receiving quality educational opportunities that shape their futures is critically important, and this is something that we know is at the heart of AVID, it's at the heart of Victoria University. Our block mode teaching, using good teaching techniques, has had a bigger impact on students from disadvantaged backgrounds than students on the average. It's improved the performance of all of them, but the ones that have particularly benefited are those from less traditional backgrounds, and that's something that we know about AVID as well. So our mission mirrors the purpose of AVID. We're staunch supporters and advocates of AVID. Working closely with schools through AVID is another way that we're working towards an equitable education for all. So thank you all for being here today. I hope you enjoy your time here and that you leave with the knowledge and skills you need to continue to create and implement learning opportunities and experiences that meet the diverse needs of all of your students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to say, in my long lifetime of being a learner, I have taken 2 economics units before and performed quite badly in both of them, both at undergrad and postgrad level. However, when I had the privilege of working with Peter last year teaching an economics unit, and my first response was, "You've got the wrong girl. This is not my forte." But with Peter engaging with the block teaching, high engagement teaching strategies, just like what we use at AVID every day, I suddenly started to understand economics. So I thank you, because you cracked a nut that I wasn't able to crack any other way. So I actually pay attention now to the economic stories on the news and think about the things you taught me, so it's worked. It is my great pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker, and that is Dr. Tanya Vaughan, who is here working with us from Evidence for Learning. So Tanya, please join us.
Thank you, Claire. It's a great privilege to be here and talking to you about a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about, and this passion developed when I was about 15. We won't go through the whole story this afternoon, but let's just start with saying that thank you so much for this opportunity to share this great passion of evidence that I have with all you here today. So I want to start off by acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and echo Claire's sentiment that we pay our respects to elders past, present, and most important, those that are emerging. So I thought we'd start with a little hands up activity. I want to find out the experience that we're sitting on in this room. So can you put your hand up if you've been in education from 0 to 5 years? All right, from 5 to 10? 10 to 15? 15 to 20? 20 to 25? 25 to 30? Wow. 30 to 35? Dare I say it? 35 to 40? Woo! 40 to 45? Let's stop there. All right. And you're exactly right to clap. That's the whole point. So when we're talking about, that's why we say evidence-informed, because you as educators bring so much to the table, and we want you to bring all that experience that you have, whether it be 5 years, whether it be 40 years. And collectively within this room, think of the experience that we are sitting upon. And you bring that and you pair it with high quality external evidence in order to increase your impact in the classroom. And that's why we all got into education, was to improve the lives of students. And I know that for ourselves as an organisation, Evidence for Learning, and also at AVID, that passion most centrally sits with those students that are most in need, and what a privilege it is to be part of that. So at Evidence for Learning, we're really all about how can we make evidence as accessible as possible to you, the profession. So we do this by building, sharing, and encouraging use of evidence. We build through our Learning Impact Fund, which pairs a program of promise with an independent evaluator. What we've done, we've published this year 3 randomised controlled trials. This is work headed up by another Associate Director, Dr. Pauline Ho. And they have been trials 2 on literacy, 2 on mathematics and 1 on literacy. Another key part of our work is sharing evidence. What we have there is our Teaching and Learning Toolkit, and I'll walk you through that this afternoon. Within that, it's a meta-analysis of 35 different approaches in education that's provided free to you, the profession, and updated every 2 years by a global literature review. It provides information on a cost, on months of impact, and on evidence security, which is the depth and breadth of beautiful evidence that sits underneath every one of those approaches. Another key part of our work is the sharing of evidence, and that's what I'm doing here today. So it says 160 up here, but we're really at 161 as of right now. So in sharing events across Australia, I'm very fortunate to have spoken to over 7,500 educators in the past 3 years. And also within this, we share through our guidance reports, which provide really practical information around key topics of interest to educators. So here are some of our partnerships across Australia. Most importantly, you can see AVID up there on the slide. Shout out to Claire. All right, so the Teaching and Learning Toolkit, what is this all about? It acts as an introduction to educational research, and it's really there to help and guide evidence-informed decision-making at the school level. We have the 3 key markers of cost. We're not selling programs, but it's indicated by the dollar sign. So the higher the amount of dollar signs, the higher the amount of money to implement that type of program. The second part is the security of the evidence, and that's the locks. And some people have called them handbags, but they're not. They're definitely locks, all right? I know they look a little bit like handbags. And that's, so the depth and breadth. So the higher the amount of evidence, the larger the amount of padlocks. The third is the months of impact, and that's a translation from an effect size. And I'll walk you through that. I love statistics, so everyone get excited. Yeah, I'm feeling it. All right. Oh, I like the little call out. I don't know who that was. All right, here is the Teaching and Learning Toolkit. So here are the 35 different approaches. This is underpinned by over 10,000 research studies. And the numbers move up and down. Do we have any outdoor adventure learning people? Any hands up for outdoor adventure? Yes, the back there. Exciting news for you right there. We move from plus 3 months to plus 4 months in that. So the numbers go up and down based on the incorporation of new meta-analyses. All right, so let's have a look at the site that we built in collaboration with AVID that's mapped to your teaching and learning framework. So what we did here, we mapped the 35, Claire and I sat down and mapped the 35 different approaches in the toolkit to your framework to make this as accessible as possible to yourselves in working with the AVID. And what we can say, if we have a look at one of the approaches, if we dive down and have a look at feedback. So here's feedback. It has a low cost, has a high-ish evidence security, and it has an amazing impact on students' learning. Plus 8 months of learning over a 12-month period. And what the front page of the toolkit provides you with, it provides you with information about what is it, how effective is it, what are the costs, and then what should I consider is probably the most practical part. Tomorrow in my workshop, those of you that have the pleasure of joining me tomorrow, we'll be working through this in greater detail and you'll be hands-on with a toolkit. Oh, this is my favourite part. Okay, now, we've just dived into the references. The references there, we have effect size table, and it's a mean weighted effect size based on the standard error. It's probably too much detail, but I love it. With standard error, which is a reflection of how many students in each of the studies. Okay, this is work headed up by Professor Steve Higgins out of Durham University. And we've taken that beautiful effect size of 0.63 and we've translated that into 8 months of learning progress because we think that that's a more accessible way for you to think about learning in your classrooms. Good, getting nods, fantastic. Great. And what we also have is links out to all the meta-analyses that underpin that mean weighted effect size. Then what we did, because we wanted to contextualise this further for Australia, we collaborated with Melbourne Graduate School of Education, and what they did together, they pulled together the research for the past 6 years across those 35 different approaches in looking at both qualitative and quantitative studies to provide an idea of what's actually occurring in Australian classrooms for those 35 approaches. What we found in doing that was there were some approaches that had a lot of Australian and New Zealand research. So for example, from arts participation, we saw a lot of research. In feedback, we didn't see a lot in Australia. So what we did then, we collaborated with AITSL and we produced the AITSL feedback implementation materials, which provide even further in-depth analysis into how can you implement feedback successfully in your classroom to improve students' learning to the greatest degree. So this is our Learning Impact Fund. This is where we're building evidence. Here are the randomised controlled trials that we've produced so far this year in conjunction with academic partners. So we have Mini-Lit, Quick Smart Numeracy and Thinking Maths, and Resilient Families, excitedly, based here in Victoria, is due to be released in 1 week. So this is the type of reports that we produce. We publish the 100-page research evaluation report, but then we publish a 2-page summary for educators, because I'm an educator, I've been in the classroom and I know how pressed you are for time, and 2 pages seems like about the right amount. What we have here is, you can see again the same indicators that we have in our teaching and learning toolkit. And so looking at Thinking Maths, we saw a small positive impact across all schools, but we saw that that was increased in the primary setting to the amount of 2 months' worth of additional learning. This is a program that's focusing on growing metacognition in one's learners, and also in focusing in on teachers and how they provide feedback to their students. And what we can also see, which I know is very relevant to this audience, is the school card holders, so those that are from backgrounds that are surrounded by disadvantage, were advantaged by the program disproportionately positively in comparison to the other groups. So that's exciting. This is a homegrown program that was grown up in South Australia, and we measured the impact of it in conjunction with ACR, with over 6,000 students involved. Then what we do, we provide a snapshot of, okay, that's the headline figures, but how is this actually working in the classroom? Within this, we can see that there was significant impact on various different indicators. So the key ones being pedagogical content knowledge, and the other on professional identity and self-efficacy of the teachers. So we know that this program had an impact on that, and then some of that was passed on to their practices within the classroom, and a small amount went on to influence the students' learning. What we also have is our guidance reports, and they're freely available. We've published one on implementation, and then we've also published one on the most effective use of teaching assistants in Australian classrooms. And we're just about to release 2 more before the end of the year, one on parental engagement, what's the most effective way to engage parents to improve students' learning, and the other on metacognition and self-regulation. I have time for questions, but probably... Any questions from the floor?
Tanya, we have your contact details.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No.
So I'm really grateful, thank you,
Pleasure.
for being here. The evidence behind the work that we do is really important. And as teachers press for time, there's a lot of things thrown at us, and things that sometimes departments drop in on us that they want us to do. Without an evidence-informed base, we're never really sure whether we should invest the time to get our heads around this next bright, new, shiny thing. But what you've done is given us 35 approaches to teaching that are worth investing in. You've turned data into something kind of sexy, and it gives us a place to start when we're busy and trying to figure out what to do next. So I thank you for your work. We are going to continue working together. The fact that there is an AVID toolkit is a validation of both AVID and the approaches that Tanya's talking about. Thank you for that. And we look forward to continuing to work with the schools to keep building out the evidence about why we invest in AVID and why it makes a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So it is now my great pleasure, in these opening sessions we always try to get a range of voices to speak to you and validate the work that you do every day. But it is now my great pleasure to represent the practitioner voice with one of the most inspiring practitioners I have had the privilege of working with, Miss Steph McDonald, who is the founding principal for Maccabi Rise Primary School, which also happened to have produced the most amazing students out there, Rory and Brodie Spaeth. So we'll get to you next. All right.
Good afternoon. Earlier this year, I was privileged to speak on a panel alongside Harvard Professor Eric Mazur. And these were the questions posed to us. With the world around us so rapidly changing, what is the future of teaching? In an uncertain world where artificial intelligence treatments are more effective than the average psychoanalyst, and where robots in an English class can spark empathy and improve students' writing, are face-to-face classes really necessary? Because, after all, what difference does a teacher make? My answer to these questions start with two more questions. What is the purpose of education? And as educators, what is our why? My why has formed the foundation of both who we are and how we are together at Maccabi Rise. This slide is the first of our school beliefs because our teachers know that academic learning is a deeply social process. Who our children are and how they are together matters, and it has an enormous impact on their capacity to learn. It really is rocket science. Our purpose as teachers is to grow young people who have all the skills and knowledge they need to live a good life. Ask yourself, what does a good life look like to you? Artificial intelligence may be able to do 1 million different and amazing things, but it can't teach a child the fundamental social skills needed to live a good life. A teacher can explicitly teach and model and guide a child as they learn to make friends, learn to agree and disagree respectfully, learn to negotiate conflict and arrive at a win-win resolution, learn to see something from someone else's point of view, to be happy for another's achievements. In the classroom, our children's brains are exponentially primed for learning when the adults and students embrace the social skills needed to invest in each other's success. This kind of social learning environment doesn't just develop by chance. It's the intentional work of an exemplary teacher. Toni Morrison once said, "When a child walks in the room, your child or anybody else's, do your eyes light up? That's what they're looking for." Artificial intelligence can't provide children with the social feedback they need to develop the healthy attachments that are essential for brain development. I say to my teachers at Maccabi, your eyes are a mirror to your students. Every day, every child looks at you, and they see themselves reflected there. It's your job to reflect back to them their best possible selves. It's only then that learning can happen. Because you see, not all children's brains and emotions arrive at school in the same place each day. This term, one of my teachers was reading the notes left by her students in the worry bag that hangs near the door as just one strategy her students use to both let her know what's going on in their lives and also to try and park their worries for a while and to create the cognitive space they need to be present to their learning. One Thursday, this is just some of what she read. My mum and dad are getting divorced. My mum just got told she has terminal cancer. I'm under a lot of pressure to get good grades for high school. On the same day, in the class immediately next door, that teacher was running a circle of concern to help her students learn how to address a big conflict they were having with each other. One of her boys tearfully looked into the eyes of his teacher and said, "Will you love me less if I tell you what I've done?" Teachers make a difference, and a difference that it's hard for me to imagine any kind of artificial intelligence ever making. Teachers create potential in students through what happens in their hearts and in their brain chemistry when they look in our eyes. They live up to a teacher's expectations. Students will persevere with learning that they struggle with for a teacher that they love. As one of our Year Sixes reflected, I never knew how important our safe learning environment is for some kids. Teacher-student relationships are one of the most effective influences on student achievement. Creating and sustaining these strong relationships takes continuous and intentional effort. A good friend and mentor always said to me, "Steph, learning just doesn't happen by osmosis." As she quite rightly points out, pedagogy really is a science, a very human science. At Mackay, we use our AVID system for school improvement to inform our pedagogical approach. The learning that is our core purpose requires a teacher. There's an African proverb that says, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." Collaboration, that unique interplay of human interaction that is so fundamental to this social process we call learning, sits in the middle of the AVID Wicker framework because all other learning hangs off it. Through the careful construction of a classroom environment where students feel safe, known and connected, our teachers switch children's brains on for learning. And then, based on what they know about their children, they intentionally plan high-impact instructional strategies that match both the students and the learning. Through their teachers' agile use of Wicker strategies, students dive into collaborative inquiry that enables them to wrestle with learning that challenges them and facilitates them to make deep connections between themselves and their learning. And all the while, their teacher is constantly monitoring each and every one of them and providing the feedback needed to continue to drive the learning. Teachers anticipate, plan, and improvise. They know when to keep asking questions, when to step in, and when to step out of learning. They know how to nurture the metacognition needed for students to understand how their own learning works so that they can think critically when they encounter obstacles and problem solve their way around it. Robots do not have this kind of situational cognition needed to teach productive struggle. Teachers do, particularly AVID teachers do, and they use it to scaffold the learning of every child every day. Thank you.
If we had every school with principals like the principals who are in this room that Steph just represented, our schools would be in very good shape. Steph, thank you. I learn from you every time I listen to you. So I'm going to just give you a moment to reflect on some things that Steph said before I introduce Rory, so she can have a moment to come up to the stage and catch her breath. And I'm going to do some thank yous at this point because nobody will want to follow Rory after she's spoken. So I want to take the opportunity to thank the AVID team, who number now 7 of us, who make this event happen and everything else that happens in AVID throughout the year. So to my small but mighty AVID team, thank you all, because without you, none of this would happen. And of course, none of this would happen if we didn't have the remarkable staff developers who travel from all over the country and from the US, who are exemplary teachers, lead teachers on the AITSL scale from all over the world, because it doesn't actually matter where we come from. Together we are committed to making sure every child in our care gets the very best teaching and learning that they are entitled to. And I haven't yet met a child who doesn't deserve to have the very best teaching and learning. So to the staff developers, can you please wave your hand and thank you for coming so far. And before I let Rory come and speak, an ad for next year. Next year is 10 years of AVID in Australia. It is 40 years for AVID in the US. So I'm always a little sobered when I look at the numbers by comparison. But they've got more people than us, so that's fair. But our 10 years is going to be really special. We will have a student speaker. We will have 2 student speakers next year, a primary student and a secondary. So please think about how you might prepare some of your young people to enter our public speaking competition next year, and perhaps they too can be like Rory. The young man on that poster was an AVID student, is now at Victoria University Vice-Chancellor. So, and I know Hassan Nur Hussain is in the audience, and I think Jesse is also in the audience, a young man who was at an AVID school and then became a pre-service teacher and now works at an AVID school. So there are lots of reasons for us to continue to invest in AVID and give every child the opportunity to achieve their potential. And nobody is better at explaining that to us than young Rory Spaeth. It is my pleasure to welcome our first ever primary school national AVID speaker.
Hi. My name is Rory Spaeth. I'm 12 years old and I attend Mackay Rise Primary School in Western Australia. I'm honoured to be able to share my story with you today. My first 6 years of my education was not AVID, but instead a dark place, a roller coaster of fear, sadness and distress, and then finally, hope and joy. As a kid, I lived mostly in South Australia. I started school uneasily. My parents had a negative experience of schools, and it seems I partially did as well. Their attitude towards school was not so great, and neither was mine. I didn't have many friends and faced social exclusion and gossiping. Kids at my school were either stereotyped as popular or unpopular, and I, for one, was definitely unpopular. This label seemed to be true, as I ultimately seemed to have had no friends. I was fine with it though, as I had it normalised. But the truth is, every day felt lonely and isolated. No matter the time or effort I put in, my peers constantly pushed me away and talked about me behind my back. It took me a long time of trying and failing to fit in with the other kids, and so I eventually gave up. I just couldn't deal with the feeling of being judged or useless anymore. I'd seen my older sister go through similar, and the only thing that kept me going was knowing that one day I'd find some good friends, just like she did. But I still questioned and blamed myself for my loneliness. Maybe it was my fault that I had no friends. At that time, I struggled to regulate my emotions. Even now, it is still a challenge for me to work in groups, as that was just something I was never included in, nor fond of for all those years. As I look back and reflect on my experience, I think of the advice I could give to teachers so that they can make a difference in the life of a student just like me. I would have liked my teachers back then to know that I was capable of improving, to know that all they had to do was believe in me and get to know me. Teachers, never overlook the simple part of a student's schooling, including the social, which should essentially be embraced. All I wanted was for my Year 5 teachers to do that. Maybe then they would have seen what was holding me back and the possibilities that just waited there. This would have made Year 5 a more enjoyable experience. But I was, and still am, very fortunate to have had the first and by far the most important opportunity presented to me, the chance to move somewhere new, somewhere that had more for me to explore, understand, and look forward to. This alone gave me the strongest sense of hope an 11-year-old girl could ask for. This also meant a whole new school, which gave me worry when starting, as I had no way of knowing if the students in Mackay were just like the ones from my old school. I was holding my breath that things would be different, but I dreaded that things would just remain the same. Of course, though, Mackay was already so much better and so much more extravagant. Just seeing the teachers was the first difference. I could tell things were changing for me. My teachers cared how I felt and what I wanted. They asked about my hopes and dreams early in, and my class and I frequently wrote SMART goals. We also learned strategies to reach what I had previously thought to have been unachievable. The classroom expectation was to work and learn and do all we could to reach our potential. The second difference would be learning how to collaborate with peers in and out of the classroom. This was new, but promising. In contrary to Year 5, where I felt like I didn't need to focus so much on friends because no one wanted to be my friend either. I now find being social is enjoyable, and I now look for the chance to make new friends. Even though it can be challenging, I have learned from the past and am willing to accept other people's ideas and give them a chance to accept mine. The third difference would be the work strategies and how much my teachers genuinely helped with my grades. I just want them to know how inspiring and supportive they are and how amazingly you've changed my perspective. Up until Year 6, I was convinced school was just a place of loneliness and limited learning. I remember the feeling of comfort in Mackay. I can distinctly remember how little my previous school cared about its students, and Mackay outshone it almost instantly. In contrary to my previous schools, Mackay had so many opportunities, appearing so much more frequently. I felt like I actually had a chance to embrace myself and leave the past behind me. The opportunities presented themselves to me like open windows, and for my part, I knew that I shouldn't shut them. One of these opportunities would have definitely been learning how to develop and use a scholarly and formal language. I love confidently expressing myself in all areas of my work and using my imagination to its fullest. This went hand in hand with another opportunity, my leadership role. I have also used my scholarly language to help present a workshop for teachers at a teacher conference. Not to mention this very moment, which is something to truly behold. It all works together. The school and AVID has helped me improve my confidence and work integrity. I continued from there to take on all and any opportunities that appeared for me. I gave everything a go while it was present. I hope to do the same with future schooling and careers. I am now a student leader and take my learning beyond its limits and make my life mission statement a reality through determination and perseverance. The mind is limitless, as many say, so I ought to feel it with passion, knowledge, workmanship, and honour. Then I'll use that mind to create the changes that I wish to see in the world and resolve and reduce problems that I faced, like bullying. Now, I've told you my past, present, and hopes for the future. But to the crux of the matter, allow me to inform you of what the school has taught me about seizing opportunities. An opportunity is a 1 in a million chance sometimes and should never be taken for granted. All my previous teachers need to know about me was the issues that were holding me back from doing so. They needed to know that with some encouragement and hard work, the world could be my oyster. My current teachers have showed me that when I don't succeed, I will find where the glory of resilience truly lies. The key to success is knowing that I can get back up from mistakes, and how. Have a peace of mind that not all opportunities are destined for you. But in that peace of mind, still remember that life has a way of surprising itself more often than not, and that your opportunities will always be there. Not necessarily the same, not necessarily different, but there, nevertheless. Opportunities leave as quickly as they appear sometimes. So as I hear many say, don't leave any stone unturned. Live a life where your vocabulary consists of a vast amount of yes and fewer no's. To end off, I'd like to say that after I went through what I did, I now know how important school really is. If I could go back to my Year 5 teacher, I'd tell her that if she had taken the time, she would have been able to understand me and my needs to potentially have made Year 5 a better place. And if I could give my Year 5 self advice, it would be, believe that there is always something more you can do, even if you feel limited and that it's impossible, or you don't know how you could accomplish more, or recognise what you can do to get there. Since coming to Mackay, my teachers showed me that there was actually nothing stopping me from doing what I desired. I just need to seize the opportunities that are waiting for me with no doubts, knowing that there is nothing stopping me anymore. I'd just like to mention that I'm not only incredibly proud of myself, but I'm proud of the teachers, AVID, all of you guys, because without you, without you guys, there would be no change with how a student thinks or feels. You really do make the biggest difference out there. Thank you for listening to my speech. It's been a true privilege to stand here today.
Rory, how does that feel?
I feel amazing.
Rory, did you really write that speech?
I did.
So I shared that speech with someone recently and they said, she really didn't write that speech. And I said, yeah, I did. She really did. Our students are amazing. Sometimes the people who put the limits on what they can achieve are inadvertently us. So thank you for reminding us that you are great, all of the students that you represent. I am excited to see where you go next. South Coast Baptist, you are really lucky that Rory is coming your way. And thank you for reminding us of why we do this work every day. So proud of you. Beth, Ben, I'm sorry, I just got your mum's name wrong, didn't I? Emma, Ben, and to your brother who's come here and looked after you as well, your twin brother, and I promised him I wouldn't call him up to speak. Thank you for making the trip and supporting Rory to have this opportunity. That means the world to us as well. Thank you. So, Rory and her brother are going to be coming tomorrow into Strands. You'll get to speak to her and ask her some more questions. But on that note, it's probably time for you to go to dinner, get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. Sight teams start as well. So you've got Strand in the morning, then sight team in the afternoon. There are tissues for those who need them, like me. And have a safe trip. There are buses going back to Footscray, buses going back to the CBD, or you are welcome to stay and have dinner and then make your own way home. Thank you for being here.